Hello, my name is Sean Perriman, and in this tutorial we learn about cell reference, which is a specific point in Excel that's represented by a combination of a letter column and a row number. Now for cell references, there are three basic types. We have the relative cell reference, which is a reference that changes when it's copied. Then we have the absolute cell reference, which is a reference that does not change when it's copied, and which also in absolute cell reference is indicated by a dollar sign before the column letter and a dollar sign before the row number. And lastly, we have a mixed cell reference, which is a cell reference that's partly relative and partly absolute, where either the column or the row has the dollar sign and the other one does not. Now, just for this example, we're just going to talk about relative cell reference and absolute cell reference. Now, for those who don't know what a cell reference is, as I mentioned, it is a specific point in Excel that represented by a combination of a letter column and a row number. So if I was to select this cell right here, we have a cell reference of J8, and the reason why I know that because column J and row number 8 is selected. And if I was to select another cell reference, which is right here, this is cell reference G10. And the reason why did I know that because we have column G and we have row number 10 selected, as well as another way that we can verify the cell reference is up here in our name box. So as you can see, cell reference G10 is selected. And also in our name box, we can manually type and select the cell reference. So if I was to select cell reference B9 and hit enter, as you can see, cell reference B, column B, and row number 9 has been selected, which is this cell reference right here. Now, in this example, we have a list of 6 students. And they have 3 different ranges of test scores. Now, up here is our weighted average for each test score. So 0.25 is the weighted average for test scores 1. 0.33 is the weighted average for test score 2, and 0.42 is going to be our weighted average for test score 3. In the way that we find this cell, the weighted average is we're going to take each test score and we're going to multiply it by the weighted average, and we're going to do that for test 1, we're going to do that for test 2, and we're going to do that to test 3, and we're going to sum them up, and that's going to be our weighted average. Now, the reason why I have 2 column worth of cells of weighted average is I want to visually help you understand cell reference, and we're not going to, first we're actually going to do a copy, and we're going to see how it's going to work out. So we're going to do an example first, and then we're going to actually go into the actual reference, the relative cell reference as well as the absolute cell reference. So as I mentioned, we're going to have to multiply the first test score times the first weighted average, the next test score by the next weighted average, and the last test score by the third weighted average. Now in Excel, before we do any type of calculation or formula, we have to start with the equal sign because that will let Excel know that, hey, a calculation is about to be performed. So we're going to type in the equal sign. Again, it's not going to be any spaces, so we're going to select cell reference C9. As you can see, it's manually typed in, and also you can see it on the formula bar as well. So, and then we're going to multiply that, as I mentioned, the value that's in cell reference C6, and I'm just going to click on it to highlight it. And as you click on the cell reference, it automatically is populated in your formula. And then we're going to, again, like I said, we're going to add that, and we're going to multiply by the test score that's in cell reference D9. Then we're going to multiply by the weighted average in D6. Then we're going to add the last test score, which is in cell reference E9. Then we're going to multiply that by the weighted average that's in E6. And to confirm, we can either hit enter on our keyboard, or we can hit the enter button here on our formula bar. So let's do that. So as you can see, this student has a weighted average of 32.12. Now we can use, instead of manually typing in this formula in each different cells, we can use what is called the auto field, which we can, since it's cell selected, which is the first thing that we want to do, and then we glide our mouse to the bottom right hand corner until it turns to the black cross, and we can hold down our left click and then just drag down to these particular cells and let it go. Now as you can see, we have some weird values. We have 0, we have, you know, a question of value, we don't have no value, and then we have these numbers that looks kind of awkward. So let's actually look at these formulas that's in these particular cells. So the way that we can do that, we can go to our formula bar and we can click on the show formulas button, and then we do that. So as you can see, it gives a little extra space on that other. So let's just shrink those so we can see it a little bit better. So do that. Alright, so it looks a little bit better where we can see it. Let me make sure we have the same size as we have in these. So let's actually look at these formulas that we have, and the reason why it looks kind of awkward. So as you can see, we did the right thing, because again, like I said, we wanted to take each test score and multiply it by weighted average, and then I wanted to take this test score and multiply it by this weighted average, and then I want to take this test score and multiply it by this weighted average. And the same thing should happen in each of the other cells. You should take this test score and multiply by this weighted average. We're going to take this test score and multiply it by this weighted average, and we're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply it by this weighted average. So as you can consistently see, what should happen is we should be taking, these should be, when we look at our formulas, or cell reference, excuse me, they should be our relative cell reference, because those are the ones that's going to change. But these values right here should not change, because those are absolute, because again, as you can see the pattern, we'll see a common pattern that we should take a test score and multiply by this to get at least one of those particular averages, and then we should add them up. But if we look at our formula, we did this one correctly, but when we look at this one, right here we have C10, which is this cell reference, then it says multiplied by C7. So as you can see, this is C7 right here. So as you can see, it wasn't consistent of sticking with this particular cell. And then it says, then the next one is D10, which is this cell reference, which is correct, but it says, but the next one is multiplying by D7, and D7 is right here. And then we look at the last one, we have E10, which is correct for the initial cell reference, but it should be multiplying by the cell reference of E6, but it's not, as multiplying by the cell reference of E7. So as you can see, C9, C10, C11, C12, C13, C14, those should be changing, of course, but what should not be changing is this cell reference of C6. So as you can see, it is changing. It's going from C6 to C7, C8, C9, C10, C11. Those should not be changing. It should stay the same. We should be still multiplying by whatever value is in C6. So that should not be changing. But when we look at the next part of it, D9, D10, D11, D12, D13, which is this range of cells, D9, D10, D11, D12, D13, D14, those are changing, and that's correct. But what not should be changing should be the cell reference of D6. So when we look at the rest of them, we have D6 here, but it's changing to D6, to D7, D8, D9, D10, D11. And then the last average, we should be multiplying whatever value is in E9. Now that should be changed from going from E9 to E10, E11, E12, E13, E14, which it is, and that's what it's supposed to be doing, because this is E9, E10, E11, E12, E13, E14. But what not should change is the value in E6, but it is. So as you can see, it's going from E6 to E7 to E8 to E9, E10, 11. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at it, and we see those formulas are kind of, well, the end result is looking awkward. So if we go back to our formulas bar and then we unshow the formula, those why we have those crazy values that we have at the time. So we readjust the cell so we can look at this correctly. So that's why we have these crazy values. So now we're going to actually, now this is where the relative cell reference and the absolute cell reference comes into play. So again, as per our definition, again, the cell reference is a reference that changes when it's copied. But an absolute cell reference does not change when it's copied, and also is indicated by a $ before the column letter and the $ before the row number. So again, these cells right here are going to be the absolute cell reference because we don't want them to change. These values right here are going to be relative cell reference because we want those to change when it's copied. So again, let's put in our formula so we can actually see how this works. So again, the first thing that we need to do is place an equal sign because we're going to let Excel know that we're about to start a formula. So we're going to say equals this cell reference times this cell reference. And again, since we know that C6 should be our absolute cell reference, or the reference that does not change, is we're going to place a $ in front of the C, and we're going to place a $ in front of the 6 to make it absolute. Then we're going to again hit our addition button, and then we're going to go to the next test score, and that's cell reference D9, and then we're going to multiply again times this particular cell reference. Now, instead of having to manually type in the $, as you can see, we have a cursor after the 6, and then to make it absolute cell reference, we can just press the F4 on our keyboard, and by doing so, as you can see, it automatically adds the $ for you, so you don't have to do it. Then we're going to do our last average. Now we can either click on the cell to have Excel automatically type it in for us, or we can manually type it in ourselves. So we're going to say, of course, our last one is going to be, we're going to add the value of the cell reference of E9, so I can manually type in E9. And as you can see, E9 is highlighted, so we know that we did select this correct cell, and I know that you cannot see the E9 or the rest of the formula here, but if you go to your formula bar up here, you can actually see the current formula that's in that cell. So again, we're going to multiply by the cell reference of E6, and again, we're going to make it absolute, and then, as I mentioned, the faster way to do that is press the F4 key on your keyboard, and it adds the $ in for you, and then we're going to hit enter on our keyboard, or we can hit enter on our formula bar to confirm our formula. So I can just press enter, and as you can see, it has the same formula, but let's use our autofill method to fill in the rest of the values. So I can press and hold down my left click and drag down, or I can double click on it and then it automatically fill forward. So let's use the double click method, and as you can see, we have different values. Now again, what's the difference? Okay, well again, let's look at the formula itself to actually see the difference. So again, to see the formula, we go to our formula tab, show formulas button, and then left click on to select it. And again, we're just going to adjust our columns just so we don't drag out too far, and then we're just going to actually, okay. So let's actually look at it this time versus what we did earlier. So as I mentioned, these cells references are going to be relative because again they're going to change, and these are going to be our absolute cell reference because again we're going to take this test score, and then we're going to add it. We're going to take this test score, we're going to multiply it by this weighted average. Then we're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply it by this weighted average. We're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply it by this weighted average, and then we're going to do the same thing for each of the following students. We're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply by this weighted average, and we're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply by this weighted average, and we're going to take this test score and we're going to multiply by this weighted average. So again, as you can see, the pattern that's going on with that. So again, let's look at the formula, the correct formula in this particular range of cells. So as you can see, C9, this is what we initially started off with. We have C9, which is this cell reference, times C6, which is this cell reference, plus D9 times D6, which is this cell reference, and we have E9, which is this cell reference, times E6. And as you can see, C9 goes from C10 to C11 to C12 to C13 to C14. And as you can see, C6 is constant in all of the cells when we copied it. And it's because we made it absolute by putting the dollar signs. And because that's the cell reference that we don't want to change when we use the autofill method. And again, we wanted these range of cells to change because we went from D9 to D10, D11, D12, 13, 14. And again, we want the common number that we want to multiply by is this particular cell reference, whatever number is in that cell reference. So as you can see, D6, 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 D6. The reason why it's in every cell, in all the formulas, is because we made it absolute. And as you can see, an absolute cell reference is a reference that does not change when it's copied. So again, E9 is relative because there's no dollar signs. So again, E9 is going to change from E9 to E10, E11, E12, E13, E14. And we made E6 absolute because we add dollar signs to it. And as you can see, E6 is common in all of the rest of the formulas. So again, this helps us to make sure that whatever we make sure that cell is going to be copied, we're going to use that as our absolute, or it's not going to change when we copy the formula. And then of course, so as you can see how we have problems with the other formulas because again, we didn't make all of them were relative, so therefore all of them change because again, this went from C9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, C6, C7, C8, C9, C10, 11, and so forth because they're relative. So by them being relative and have no dollar, we know they're relative because they don't have a dollar sign. And as we can see that they change when we use our autofill to copy, each cell change versus when we did it over here and when we made particular cell reference absolute and it didn't change. So let me unhide the formula and readjust for my columns. So as you can see, we have two sets of answers. Well, the first number is the same because we have the same formula. But when we use the field handle method, then we have different answers. So that can make a difference. As you can see, it make a big difference because again, it's multiplying different cell references that it should not be multiplying. And of course, just like anything with Excel, it will update the information. So if I was to change either a test score here, it will update it will update each answer. So if I was to take 20 and make it, I don't know, 85 and hit enter to confirm, as you can see, the value changed. So again, we need to really discard this particular range of cells because again, the form is incorrect, and I could just delete it just to ignore it. So again, we know that because now we have the correct formula, then we know that these are the correct averages. So again, if I was to take even the weighted average and I change that to 0.12 and hit enter to confirm, as you can see, the answer will change because again, it's taking whatever numbers in that cell reference and just doing simple multiplication and addition as well, excuse me. So I hope that this tutorial on cell reference, relative cell reference, and absolute cell reference has been helpful. Please leave comments or inbox me if you want the actual copy of this particular exercise Excel spreadsheet if you want to practice on your own, or you can just simply make up your own numbers and you can, of course, practice. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to listen to and examine this tutorial. I hope you learned something. And again, if you would like for me to do a one-on-one with yourself or somebody else, or if you'd like me to come to your employer and update people on basic Excel exercise as well as Word, PowerPoint, and Access, I'd be happy to do so. So just leave me a private message, or you can contact me at my email at computertrainme@yahoo.com. And let me just make that a little bit bigger so we can actually see that. So we'll go to the Home tab and bold it and increase the size. There it goes. So this is in my email. And again, like I said, I'd be happy to help you with your Microsoft needs. Thank you.